My name is Elena. For 15 years, I was a wife in a quiet, lonely house. I often felt like a ghost, just moving through the empty rooms. When everyone heard about my husband's affair with a nurse, they called it my greatest tragedy. But I knew something they didn't. They were wrong. It was my escape. Before I was just Samuel's wife, I had a completely different life. I was a freelance translator, and I thought it was the most wonderful job in the world. I lived inside a world of words, building bridges between different cultures. It was more than a job. It was my passion. In fact, it was how I met Samuel. I remember our first date so clearly. We would sit in a small, quiet coffee shop for hours. I would teach him beautiful words from other languages that had no single word in English. His eyes would light up with curiosity. He was an architect, a man of lines and structures, but he was fascinated by my world of feelings and ideas. I felt so seen, so understood. He once told me, "Elena, your mind is the most beautiful place I have ever visited." I held on to those words for years, but years passed. Our 2 children were born. Life became a routine of schedules and responsibilities. Slowly, our long conversations disappeared. Now, we only talk about practical things, like who will pick up the kids or if the bills are paid. My personal dictionary, the one filled with all my favorite untranslatable words, has not been opened in years. It lies in a box under our bed, covered in dust. Sometimes, I felt like a part of me was in that box, too. I tried to reconnect. Last Christmas, I found a special book of poetry I knew he would love, the old hymn. He opened my gift and smiled, but it was a polite, tired smile. "Thank you, honey," he said, and put it on a high shelf. He never opened it again. A week later, I saw him on the sofa, completely lost in a magazine about modern architecture. His eyes were bright with interest. I knew in that moment, the man who fell in love with me, the man who visited my mind, was gone. He had moved out a long time ago. The distance between us grew wider and wider. Then, 3 months ago, Samuel got very sick. He had pneumonia. For a man who liked to control everything, being sick was like being in a prison. He became difficult and angry. I tried to take care of him, but nothing was ever good enough. One morning, I brought him his medicine. He looked at the clock on the wall. "You're 2 minutes late," he said, his voice cold and hard. I said nothing. I just felt tired, a deep kind of tired that sleep could not fix. A few days later, the doctor said he needed to go to the hospital. When I heard the news, a small, selfish part of me felt a little bit of peace. I thought, maybe this is good. I hoped that when he came back, he would be different. I whispered to myself, maybe he will understand that some things cannot be planned. Maybe he will soften. It was a small, foolish hope. The next day, I went to visit him. As I walked towards his room, I heard laughter. I stopped. Through the open door, I saw him with a young nurse named Emily. He was listening to her so carefully. His head was tilted. His eyes were bright. She was beautiful and full of life, telling him about her dream to travel the world. Samuel, my husband, was listening to another woman's dreams. I couldn't remember the last time he had asked about mine. Then, he started telling her about his latest building design, and her eyes filled with admiration. She looked at him with stars in her eyes. I just stood there, holding a bag of his favorite fruits, feeling like a delivery person. I thought, what happens when I am not here? When she finally left the room, Samuel looked at me. His face was blank again. "Did you remember to pay the electricity bill?" he asked. My heart felt heavy, like a stone in my chest. I did not drive home that day. I walked. I needed to feel the ground under my feet. The evening air was cool on my face. I watched the people on the street, laughing, talking, rushing. They were all living their own stories. For just a moment, I felt like a part of the world again, not just a ghost in my own home. When Samuel came home from the hospital, he was a different man, but not in the way I had hoped. He was quiet, too quiet. He sat in the car on the way home and just looked out the window. He did not say a word. I knew something was wrong. It was a new kind of silence, and it scared me more than his anger. In the days that followed, he was always on his phone, a small, secret smile on his face. I asked him who he was texting. Just a colleague, he would say, without looking at me. But he never smiled like that at messages from his colleagues. I knew, deep down, that his silence was filled with secrets, and I was afraid of what I might find if I looked too closely. I knew I could not ignore the secrets anymore. A few days later, Samuel told me he had an important business dinner. "It's with a new client," he said. "Don't wait up for me." He put on his most expensive suit, the one he wore when he wanted to impress someone. A cold feeling washed over me. I felt a knot in my stomach. A woman's intuition is a powerful thing. It's a quiet voice that whispers the truth, even when you don't want to hear it. I knew he was lying. My hands were shaking, but I took my car keys and followed him. He did not drive to the business district. He drove to a fancy, romantic restaurant on the other side of town. I parked my car across the street, in the shadows of a large tree. My heart was beating so fast, it felt like a drum against my ribs. I sat there and waited. A few minutes later, Emily arrived. She was not wearing her nurse's uniform. She was wearing a beautiful, sparkling evening dress. Samuel stood up to greet her. He kissed her gently on the cheek. I watched them through the large restaurant window. I felt like I was watching a movie of someone else's life. They were laughing. He looked so relaxed, so happy, so alive. He looked like the man I had married, not the stranger who lived in my house. Then, the moment came that broke everything. I saw him reach across the table. He gently brushed a piece of her hair from her face. His hand stayed there for just a second too long. Then he took out a small, velvet box. He opened it and revealed a delicate, sparkling bracelet. My breath caught in my throat. He carefully put the bracelet on her wrist. Then, he lifted her hand to his lips and kissed it. It was not a passionate kiss. It was a kiss full of tenderness, of affection, of promise. It was everything he had stopped giving me years ago. That was the final limit. In that moment, something inside me snapped. I felt the air leave my lungs. My entire world became small and focused on that one image. His lips on her hand. I felt no tears. I only felt a strange, cold, calm. I knew what I had to do. I got out of the car. I walked across the street, my steps steady and sure. I walked into the restaurant. The soft music and chatter stopped as people turned to look at me. I ignored them. I walked directly to their table. Samuel and Emily looked up. The smiles on their faces froze. Their skin went pale. I said nothing. I looked straight at Emily. For years, I had been a ghost. In that moment, I decided to finally be seen. I raised my hand. The sound of the slap was loud in the quiet room. It echoed through the entire restaurant. The sound of the slap cut through the soft music. For a moment, there was only silence. Every person in the restaurant was staring at our table. Emily held her hand to her face, her eyes wide with shock and shame. I could see a red mark already forming on her cheek. Samuel jumped to his feet. His chair scraped loudly against the polished floor. His face was dark red with anger and embarrassment. "Elena!" He finally shouted, his voice shaking. "Are you crazy?" I looked at him, and for the first time in many years, I did not feel small or afraid. I felt nothing, just a cold, clear calm. I thought, so this is the end. A small, sad smile touched my lips. "Crazy?" I asked. My voice was quiet, but it carried through the silent room. "No, Samuel, I am not crazy." I took a deep breath. For years, I tried to understand your silence. I tried to understand your distance, but I was using the wrong dictionary. I looked at the bracelet on Emily's wrist, then back at his shocked face. Tonight, I am finally translating your actions into truth, and the truth is, our marriage is over. The words hung in the air between us. I felt a strange sense of power. I had finally said it. I had finally spoken my own language. Samuel just stood there, speechless. His mouth was open, but no words came out. He looked completely lost. I turned my head and looked at the other diners. They were all watching us, their forks frozen in midair. I knew I had to finish this. "I am sorry to disturb your evening," I said, my voice clear and steady for everyone to hear. "My husband here, the talented architect, is just designing a new relationship." I let the words sink in. "Please, continue your meals." I gave Samuel one last look. I saw shock, I saw anger, and for the first time, I saw a little bit of fear in his eyes. I knew he finally understood that he had lost control. Then, I turned around. I did not run. I walked slowly and calmly towards the exit. With every step, I felt the weight of the last 15 years lifting from my shoulders. I left him and his new design behind in the ruins. I drove home alone. The adrenaline from the restaurant slowly faded away. It was replaced by a deep, aching emptiness. I walked into our dark, quiet house. I sat on the sofa and waited. I did not turn on any lights. I just sat there, in the darkness, and waited for the real storm to begin. An hour later, Samuel came home. He slammed the front door shut. The sound echoed through the house. He turned on the lights, and his face was a mask of fury. "How could you do that, Elena?" he yelled, throwing his car keys onto the table. "You embarrassed me. You embarrassed both of us." I looked at him. I was no longer the quiet wife. The woman from the restaurant was still with me. "I embarrassed you?" I asked, my voice dangerously calm. "You are the one who was on a secret date with another woman. You are the one who lied." He walked closer, his fists tight. "All right," he shouted. "You want the truth? Fine. I will give you the truth. Being with her, I feel alive. She admires me. She listens to me. She makes me feel like a man." He pointed a finger at me. "And you? What do you do? You are just quiet. I am so tired of your silence, your sadness. For years, there has been nothing interesting, nothing exciting. You made yourself a ghost in this house, and now you blame me for not seeing you." His words were like stones, each one hitting me, hard. But something strange happened. They did not break me. He took another step closer, his voice filled with contempt. "Who do you think you are to make a scene like that? You live in my house. You spend my money. Without me, what are you, Elena? A lonely housewife with some silly, unfinished dictionary? Do you really think you can survive without me?" I listened to every cruel word, and in that terrible moment, I felt a powerful change inside me. His words were supposed to kill my spirit. Instead, they revived me. All the sadness I had carried for years suddenly disappeared. All that was left was clarity. I felt a strange peace fall over me. I did not cry. My hands were steady. I looked straight into his angry, confused eyes. A small, real smile touched my lips for the first time in a very long time. "Thank you, Samuel," I said softly. He looked confused. "Thank you? For what?" "For finally telling the truth," I whispered. Then I knew exactly what my future would be. That night, I did not go to our bedroom. I slept on the sofa in the living room. I did not feel sad or scared anymore. I only felt a clear sense of purpose. I knew what I had to do. The next morning, while Samuel was at work, I made a phone call. It was the most important call of my life. I called a lawyer. I explained everything. My voice was calm and strong. I was ready to fight for my freedom. The divorce was not easy. Samuel was angry and hurt. He thought his money could fix everything. He hired the best lawyers. He tried to get custody of our children. He promised them a big house, expensive toys, and wonderful vacations. He thought he could buy their love, just like he thought he had bought mine. Before the final court day, Samuel took the children to a toy store. He told them he could buy them anything they wanted if they chose to live with him. My son looked at a big, expensive toy robot, then looked back at his father. "Can you buy Mom's smile back?" he asked. Samuel had no answer. But our children were smarter than he thought. They were 14 and 11. For years, they had seen their father's distance. They had felt their mother's quiet sadness. They had lived in a house that slowly fell apart. When the judge asked them who they wanted to live with, they did not hesitate. They chose me. They chose a smaller apartment filled with love over a big, empty house. I thought that would be his greatest pain, losing his children. It was Samuel's first real failure. He could not design a solution for this. He could not build his way out of it. The day we moved out, the house was quiet. Samuel was not there. I walked through the empty rooms one last time. I felt no sadness, only relief. Before I left, I walked into his beautiful, modern office. I looked at the big, expensive desk where he designed buildings for other families. I took off my wedding ring. I placed it gently on top of his latest architectural plans. There was no need for a letter. The small, golden ring said everything. It was the final translation. A year passed. My new life was not easy, but it was mine. I found a small, bright apartment for me and the children. It was not a big, modern house, but it was warm and full of laughter. It was a home. One evening, there was a knock on the door. I was surprised to see Samuel standing there. He looked older and very tired. The confident, powerful architect was gone. He looked like a broken building. He asked if he could talk to me for a minute. I let him in. He told me everything. He said that Emily had stayed with him for a few months, but she was only interested in his money. When he refused to buy her an expensive car, she left him for another, richer man. He also told me about the consequences of that night at the restaurant. Someone there had a connection to the local newspaper. The story spread. The hospital started an investigation into Emily's behavior. They discovered she had a history of getting too close to wealthy patients. She was fired from her job and had to leave the city in shame. When Samuel told me this, I felt no satisfaction, only a quiet sense of closure. Her story was over. Mine was just beginning. Then he looked at me, his eyes full of regret. "I was a fool, Elena," he said, his voice breaking. "I lost everything. I lost the children. I lost you. I realize now that you were the one I always needed. Please, can you forgive me? Can we try again?" I listened to his words, and I felt nothing. No anger, no sadness, only a calm distance. I thought about the lonely wife who had waited for him for so many years. She was gone. "You don't need me, Samuel," I said, my voice soft but firm. You just need someone to fill the empty space in your big, lonely house. And I am not a filler for anyone's life anymore. I walked to the door and opened it for him. He looked at me one last time, then walked away. I closed the door, and I knew it was the final goodbye. My life was full again. I took out my old notes and started working on my dictionary. I found a job teaching a language class at a local college. And 6 months ago, I published my book, The Unfinished Dictionary. It was not a bestseller, but people loved it. They wrote to me and shared their own untranslatable words and feelings. I had found my voice again, and for the first time in a very long time, I felt truly, completely happy. Looking back, I learned a very important lesson. Sometimes, respect is a language that cannot be translated. It must be shown. When someone sees your sacrifice as your weakness, the bravest act is not to fight for their love, but to fight for your own freedom. True strength is rebuilding your world, not just living in the one they designed for you. This story teaches us some important real-life lessons. The problem was bigger than just a wrong love. First, it is dangerous to depend on someone for money. Samuel used money to control Elena. Earning your own money is not selfish. It gives you the freedom to leave a bad situation. Second, couples need to connect and share. When a husband and wife stop talking about their dreams and problems, they stop being a team. This silence makes space for a third person. Finally, people must grow together. When one person changes and the other does not, they can no longer understand each other. The real problem was the distance that grew between them. So always have your own skills and passions, and build a life based on shared dreams and respect. What is one word from your language that describes a powerful feeling? Share it in the comments below. Let's create our own dictionary of the heart. Thank you for listening to this story. Please like the video and subscribe to Peak English Stories for more lessons about language and life. Find your voice, and we will see you in the next story.